N'Golo Kanté was driving through one of the busy avenues of Paris, enjoying a rare day off from football. The city, as always, pulsed with its unique energy. Honking horns, hurried footsteps, voices blending in different languages. The overcast sky and the cold wind signaled that winter was approaching, but inside the car, the heater kept him comfortable. He was in no rush. He liked driving alone sometimes, without advisors, without the press, just him and his thoughts. As he waited for the traffic light to turn green, his attention was drawn to a group of people scattered among the cars, trying to earn a few coins. They were beggars and street performers, a common sight, but something made him focus on one particular man. There was a thin figure, dressed in worn-out clothes, holding a small, makeshift sign with shaky letters. Hungry. Any help is welcome. The man's face triggered a strange feeling in Kanté. A chill ran down his spine. The light was still red. He frowned, trying to convince himself that he was mistaken. But he wasn't. Beneath the unkempt beard, the weathered skin, and the exhausted expression, the features were unmistakable. It was Mamadou. The shock hit him like a punch to the stomach. Mamadou had been his childhood friend, his inseparable partner on the streets of Suresnes, where they grew up playing football on makeshift fields. They shared the same dreams, ran barefoot on the hot asphalt, played until late, believing that one day life would offer them something better. But at some point during their teenage years, their paths had diverged. Kanté was discovered by a scout and embarked on the journey that would make him one of the greatest midfielders in the world. Mamadou. Well, he had simply disappeared. And now, here he was, in the middle of the street, begging for food. Kanté felt his chest tighten. He was one of the most humble and reserved footballers in the world, but he had never imagined that something like this would shake him so deeply. He rolled down the car window, and Mamadou, distracted, only noticed the gesture when he heard a voice calling him. Mamadou? The man turned his face toward the voice. His gaze was empty, tired, accustomed to seeing strangers who rarely truly noticed him. But when he met Kanté's eyes, something changed. For a moment, he blinked several times, as if his mind refused to believe what it was seeing. N'Golo? His voice was hoarse, incredulous. The noise of the city seemed to fade. For a moment, it was as if the two had traveled back in time, to the streets of Suresnes, to the playful matches on the dirt fields, to the promises that one day they would change their lives. But here, before them, reality was starkly different. Mamadou took a hesitant step toward the car, his eyes wide with shock, as if he couldn't believe that the person behind the wheel was truly his old friend. Kanté, on the other hand, felt a lump in his throat. The traffic light had already turned green, and the drivers behind him started honking impatiently, but he didn't move. Get in the car, Kanté said, his voice firm yet gentle. Mamadou hesitated, looking around as if trying to determine whether this was real or just another strange dream in the freezing cold of Paris. He held onto the small sign with his dirty, trembling hands, his thin body revealing months, perhaps years, of hunger and hardship. I'm filthy, he murmured, as if ashamed. Kanté shook his head and opened the passenger door. That doesn't matter. Get in. With one last uncertain glance at the street, Mamadou finally obeyed and sat down, pulling the door shut carefully. The smell of dirt and neglect filled the car, but Kanté didn't react. It didn't matter to him. What mattered was the friend sitting beside him now, a friend he hadn't seen in years and who, somehow, had ended up on the streets, begging for help. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Kanté looked closely at Mamadou, noticing the deep dark circles under his eyes, the dry skin, the cracked lips. It hurt more than any defeat on the pitch. What happened to you? He finally asked as he started driving. Mamadou let out a heavy sigh and looked down at his hands, as if searching for an answer there. Life happened, brother. He gave a humorless laugh. I tried. I really did. But nothing worked out. Kanté remained silent, allowing Mamadou to continue at his own pace. After you left for football, I kept playing, but I wasn't like you. I wasn't good enough. I tried other paths, other jobs, but everything kept going wrong. Then things got worse. My father died, my mother got sick, and I couldn't make enough money to help. It was just one blow after another. He paused, swallowing hard. I ended up losing everything. And now I'm here. His voice carried a weight that Kanté couldn't ignore. He felt guilty, even though he knew it wasn't his fault. How had he never known about this? How had a friend so close to him disappeared like this? Why didn't you ever reach out to me? He asked, the pain evident in his voice. Mamadou let out a bitter chuckle. I saw you on TV, brother. A champion, a national hero, playing in the Premier League, winning titles, smiling with that humility everyone loves. And me, I was in the gutter. Do you think I had the courage to show up? He shook his head. I didn't want to be a burden on you. Kanté gripped the steering wheel, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. Not anger at Mamadou, but at the situation, at life, at fate, which seemed so cruel to some. You never would have been a burden to me, he said firmly. Never. Mamadou lowered his head. Silence filled the car again, but it was a heavy silence, full of unspoken words. Kanté drove to a quiet restaurant, one of those discreet places where he knew no one would bother him. As soon as they entered, Mamadou hesitated again, as if feeling out of place. But Kanté guided him to a table and ordered the biggest meal available. When the food arrived, Mamadou nearly cried. He ate quickly, like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in a long time. Kanté just watched, feeling a lump in his stomach. You don't have to go through this anymore, he said after a while. I'm going to help you. Mamadou stopped chewing and looked at him with distrust. Help how? Give me money? I don't want your pity, brother. It's not pity, it's friendship. Mamadou lowered his gaze. He wanted to believe those words, but the shame still weighed on him. What do you need? Kanté insisted. A place to stay? A job? Whatever it is, I can make it happen. Mamadou ran a hand over his face, visibly emotional. I just want a chance, N'Golo, a chance to start over. Kanté nodded, determined. Then let's make that happen. In the days that followed, Kanté wasted no time. He arranged for Mamadou to stay in a comfortable hotel where he could take a hot shower, eat well, and rest for the first time in years. At first, his old friend seemed skeptical, as if he were waiting for it all to be temporary, a fleeting act of kindness that would soon disappear. But Kanté wasn't like that. He didn't help out of obligation or to feel better about himself. He helped because he knew it was the right thing to do. As Mamadou recovered physically, Kanté began looking for ways to help him reintegrate into society. He knew that simply giving him money wouldn't solve the problem in the long run. Mamadou needed something far more valuable: dignity, purpose, a path he could walk on his own. After several conversations, it became clear that Mamadou still had a passion for football. He would never become a professional player, but maybe there was another way for him to find his place in the sport. Kanté made a few discreet phone calls, and within days he had secured an opportunity for Mamadou to start working at a youth football club, helping train young players. It wasn't a glamorous position, but it was a start. Do you really think I can do this? Mamadou asked, a mix of hope and fear in his eyes. I don't think so. I know so, Kanté replied with an encouraging smile. The first week was tough. Mamadou was rusty, insecure, and felt like people were judging him. But as the days passed, he started to find his place. Helping young players perfect their skills, encouraging them not to give up, sharing his own story, it all made him feel useful again. Kanté stayed close, never forcing his presence but always available. He helped Mamadou find a small apartment, simple but comfortable, and made sure he had the support he needed to rebuild his life. Slowly, Mamadou's distrust faded, replaced by a new sense of determination. One evening, the two sat at a small cafe in Paris, reminiscing about their childhood. You know, N'Golo, For a long time, I thought I had been forgotten, Mamadou said, staring at the cup of tea in his hands. That I had disappeared from the world and that no one cared. Kanté shook his head. I would never have forgotten you, Mamadou. I just didn't know where to find you. Mamadou smiled, but this time, it wasn't a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who, after a long time, was beginning to believe again. Life wouldn't change overnight. There would still be challenges, difficult days, and moments of doubt. But now, Mamadou had something he hadn't had in a long time: a second chance. And all because on an ordinary day, in the middle of Paris traffic, a friend from the past refused to simply look the other way. And that friendship, stronger than any title or trophy, was the real victory.